And welcome back to the Texas Longhorn Football Channel. I am your host, Andra Richardson, here for breaking news. Got a lot to discuss here on this Sunday. But before we get too far down the road with everything, just do me a favor, hit like on the video. Just hit it right now, just on for GP, just because it's the holiday season and you feel like giving. Hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel. Just gets all the news and notifications about everything that's going on. For instance, if you hit subscribe to the channel, you would know the minute that this video pops and everything else that we do here on the Texas Longhorn Football Channel. And yes, it is time for us to talk about Texas being back, sorta, back in San Antonio, right? Texas is now, we've learned here on Sunday that Texas, and not a huge surprise, that Texas is going to play against Washington in the Alamo Bowl on December 29th. Again, something that a lot of us have been talking about, a lot of us have been speculating on, and that ends up being what happens. Before we get too far down the line, though, let's talk about some of the other teams from the state of Texas that have been able to advance to bowl games and where they're going to be playing. So Houston is going to play Louisiana in the Independence Bowl. Boise State versus North Texas in the Frisco Bowl. Troy versus UTSA in the Cure Bowl. Love all these names. BYU versus SMU in the New Mexico Bowl. Southern Miss versus Rice. Go Rice Owls. In the Lending Tree Bowl. Something's missing from my list. Did anyone see what bowl Texas A&M is playing in? Did you? I didn't. I must have missed it. Maybe it was on your broadcast. It wasn't on mine. If you see to find it, and you guys know, let me know. Or maybe you have to let me know in 2023. But those guys have been able to advance to bowl games. I want to make sure I mention that. Obviously, TCU is going on to the CFP, and they've advanced. That loss this weekend against Kansas State did not hurt them, which is kind of odd in some ways. Not trying to throw any shade at TCU. Props to them. It is odd to be one of the top 4 teams in the country when you're not the best team in the conference. Just go throw that out there. We're going to let it go. We're going to let it go. Good luck to TCU and the Horned Frogs and everything that they do. It is a little weird, though. I'm not going to lie. But Texas versus Washington in the Alamo Bowl, once again, we return back to the scene of several bowl games. Now, I was thinking about a couple of storylines that we'll probably be discussing leading up to the Alamo Bowl that Texas is going to be playing in. I thought about 5 of them in a thing. We'll expand on it. We'll talk a lot more about it as time goes on. But just kind of wanted to just touch the surface, whet your palate, for instance, for us to talk about some of these topics. The first topic that I think, obviously, the most obvious topic that you got to expect is that everyone's going to talk about Steve Sarkeesian playing against his former team, Washington, in the Alamo Bowl. Steve Sarkeesian spent 5 seasons there, compiled a 34-29 record before going on to USC. He was 1-2 in bowl games over there. It was interesting. As I looked this up, Sarkeesian played in the Alamo Bowl in 2011 versus Baylor, and they lost 67-56. If you bet the over in this game, this is part of the reason why you have a house in Westlake, right? This is the main reason you got that house in Frisco. Like, this is the main reason you're doing well in life, because you had to bet that over 67-56. Listen, I got to go back and watch this. This got it out of pure curiosity, but he did play in 2011. So this won't be the first time that Steve Sarkeesian has played in the Alamo Bowl. And of course, Texas fans, I know you guys will be hoping for better and different results this upcoming year. So that's going to be like the first major storyline that you're going to hear a lot about leading up to this game, for the first press conference that Steve Sarkeesian has about it to the last one. Just get ready for the typical questions. Coach, what's it like to play in the Alamo Bowl? What's it like to play against your former team, and give us all the memories and all those kind of things? And Steve Sarkeesian will have to play ball. So that's going to be a major storyline, number 1. Number 2, Bijan Robinson. What is Bijan Robinson going to do? Because as of right now, as the time as of recording this video, Bijan Robinson hasn't announced anything. He hasn't announced whether he's coming back for one more season, whether he's going to go pro, if he's going to go pro, if he's going to play in the bowl game. Like Bijan Robinson has a lot to think about. He has a lot to decide, and that's going to be another thing that we talk about leading up to it. Even if he goes pro, does he want to play? Should guys play? There's always going to be that conversation that people have about, even if a guy's going to pro, should they play in the bowl game? Steve Sarkeesian talked about this recently, and he said, look, I want guys to play in the bowl game, but I also understand I can't make them financial guarantees that if they get hurt, I can secure their future, right? So it's going to be an interesting situation as far as what Bijan does. It's not only Bijan, there's other guys who are going to be affected too. Of course, there's the Roshans of the world, the Marvion Overshown. Like, there are those kind of guys that are going to have to make some career decisions. But we think of Bijan a little bit more just because he's a guy that many project to be a first-round pick if he comes out, the number one running back in the draft. So if he does, what kind of decision does he make? I have to keep an eye on Bijan. And again, whether he comes back or stays, that's one. If he decides to go, number two, it would obviously be, does he play in the bowl game? Number three, I think it's going to be a really interesting thing. And, we can't talk enough about this. It's going to be the Xavier Worthy story. What does this bowl game mean for a guy like Xavier Worthy? Can he and Quinn find a connection in this bowl game? Not only these bowl practices leading up to, but in the game itself, can they have a special moment? Maybe like what Casey had with Xavier Worthy in that against OU that last year in that game. Can they have a game like that where Xavier says, you know what? I'm cool. I'm good. I like it here. I want to be here. Want to be a part of the University of Texas. This thing is going to be interesting because it almost will be like kind of the last shot. I think the last sales pitch, because they can say anything that they want to Xavier. You would have to see it, obviously, on the field. If those guys can make a connection, is that enough to put a barrier, a barricade, barbed wire fences, all that kind of stuff in front of the transfer portal and tell yourself, Xavier Worthy, this is the reason why you stay? That's going to be another thing. That's number three, I think, of the interesting storylines that we're going to have to watch and monitor leading up to this game. I think number four will be the bowl practices. We always hear about how important the bowl practices is as far as development of players are concerned, the extra practices, what that means. And this one becomes really, really interesting to me because Hudson Card, as you guys know, has announced that he would enter the transfer portal. What does that mean for Texas is that Malik Murphy now has a chance to slip into that number 2 role. These practices for Malik Murphy mean a lot. It means a lot for his development, a lot for his future, opening up the door for him to compete for the job obviously in 2023. And so this is going to be, I think, a huge thing for Malik going forward. What does he do in these bowl practices? Then we know about the offensive linemen, their growth and development, and what's going to happen there. And again, we need to see a little bit more of that. And all those guys can use all the practices that they can get because we know that some of those guys are going to be called upon next season. But the Malik Murphy thing and what he does on these practices and maybe even having the opportunity to play in a game, I think that's going to be a huge thing for us to keep an eye on, a huge thing to monitor. And number 5, it's kind of a big picture thing. But if Texas can finish the season with 9 wins, I think every Longhorn fan feels good about this season, right? I mean, I think 9 allows you to look back on the season and you can kind of say to yourself, you know what, growing pains, a lot of close losses, no loss over 7 points. Average margin of defeat is 5.5. I think if you get to 9, you can feel great about this program heading into the offseason. Definitely should feel better than A&M. That should be better than Oklahoma. 9 gets you closer to 10, and then you can tell yourself, hey, the ball bounces either way on a couple of given, Saturdays. Who knows what could have happened? That I know that works in reverse as well. But I think it gives you the ammunition to feel really, really good about this team in the offseason, really good about the components that are coming in, and now building on the success of this season and hoping that carries over to 2023, 2024, 25, and beyond. You always hear about how the bowl game can kind of be that thing that lifts the program up and lifts them to another level. Think about Tom Herman when he was here. Remember how like all the turmoil, all the problems that they had in his first season, right? And then they talked about all those guys talk about Brecken Hager. I want to throw something from the old school, right? But he would talk about how those bowl practices meant so much to that team, and it helped them come together and unify to the point that the next season they were able to win 10 games and then of course go to the Sugar Bowl and beat Georgia there. So all that being said, having success within the bowl practices, which is a kind of a number 4, and then finishing the season on the win, which would kind of be a number 5 for me, that would be really important. Again, something for us to monitor and keep tabs on going forward. But for right now, the most important thing before we get to the rest of the 5 is your Texas Longhorns are back going to a bowl game, 8-4 with a chance to go to 9. Oh, it's going to be fun over the month of December. Make sure you stay tuned to the Texas Longhorn Football Channel for all the news, updates, interviews going into the bowl games. I'll make sure we'll get all those things, activities around the scenes, the sites, everything. And so for everybody on the Texas Longhorn Football Channel, it's your main man, Anwar Richardson. Thank you for checking out these breaking news, and we will talk to you soon.